Even if you pretty much have your act together, you may feel a sense of low-level frustration at work or at school, or find yourself having the same arguments over and over with the last 4 people you've dated in the last 2 years. This could be due to a hurt in your past, a trauma that you can name, or by early experiences in your childhood that set the stage before you even knew what was going on. Either way, it's secretly shaping your life. In this video, I'll explain why you're relying on an outdated script and what you can do to update it and feel better. I'm Dr. Stephen Reidbord, a longtime psychiatrist and psychiatric educator. If you like what I'm doing here, please like this video and subscribe to More Than Meds. The human mind is a prediction machine. When a distressing event occurred in your past, whether that's really long time ago in your past, in your early childhood, or more recently in your adult life, say an encounter with someone who was sadistic or emotionally manipulative, you recorded that experience in your mind to make sure it doesn't happen again. This was a smart functional strategy when you first did it, a kind of survival mechanism. But the longer it's been since then, and the more you've changed and grown in the meantime, the more obsolete it is. Years later, your mind is still scanning for the original danger. That's why an offhand remark by someone can ruin your whole day, or why a fairly normal romantic partner can make you feel uncomfortable. Here's the tricky thing about trauma. If what happened to you was an event that you can recall, that you can name, that happened in your adult life, we call that trauma. Someone threatened your life, or you witnessed something that was really upsetting and you can't get it out of your head, or you were trapped and scared by an emotionally abusive person. That's trauma, right? But when it happened very early in your childhood, maybe by innocent or well-meaning parents or siblings or other caretakers, they didn't mean you any harm, but it ended up hurting you emotionally anyway. Traditionally, we don't call that trauma. We just call that a bad childhood. Helps to explain the personality you grew up to have. The very person you came to be was in part determined by those early relationships. Now, these are basically the same thing, troubling, overwhelming emotional experiences that left scars. Yet mental health professionals use different language to describe these early childhood traumas versus the ones that happen later, and we have different means for treating them. Stay tuned and I'll explain. First, let's make this more concrete. Here are 6 signs that suggest that past traumas are still shaping your life today. If the trauma occurred early in childhood, as I say, we don't usually call this trauma. Just dysfunctional parenting, often as a result of your caretaker's own emotional wounds. Your whole personality was formed around it. It's kind of baked into who you are as a person. Some signs of this include repetitive relationship conflicts. Every relationship you get into ends the same way, just with a different person. Old emotional wounds cause you to be on the lookout for rejection. Or maybe you sabotage every relationship out of guilt because deep down you feel you don't deserve that person. Difficulty accepting praise. Positive feedback can feel uncomfortable. Early life experiences led you to believe that if the other person really knew you, they'd know that you were inadequate, that you were an imposter. This can lead you to deflect or self-criticize or withdraw. As a result, you don't fulfill your potential. You can have a vague sense of the future, a difficulty making long-term goals. Early trauma can impair your sense of self, who you are as a person, making goal setting and long-range planning kind of abstract and difficult to pin down. In contrast, if the trauma occurred later, your personality was already formed. The distortions that result are not as deep, somewhat more superficial, not exactly baked into your personality, as in the other examples. And often they're more somatic symptoms, more having to do with your body. So for example, you may have unexplained physical symptoms like headaches or stomach aches, maybe in anticipation of a social event or giving a talk. There's no medical reason for it, but it's your body's way of letting you know that something feels wrong. Hypervigilance. Your body has a built-in alarm system that evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to protect you from ferocious animals and other real-life threats. Unfortunately, it also gets activated when there is no real-life threats, but only a reminder of a past trauma that made a big impression on you. This can keep your body in a low-grade flight or fight mode so that you can never really relax. You never let your guard down. And then there's numbing. In an effort to protect yourself from further pain, you may live life at arm's length, at an emotional distance. And while that does protect you from pain, it also prevents you from enjoying the excitement and joy that life has to offer. If any of these resonate with you, it's not a personal failing. It's just the way your highly evolved mind has learned to watch out for potential threats. Why relationships get stuck on replay? Human beings are social animals. We turn to others for our sense of safety. When people who were supposed to provide safety instead constitute a threat to our physical or emotional well-being, intimacy itself can feel threatening. This can lead to a pattern of overextending yourself and then abruptly withdrawing, or maintaining distance from partners to preemptively avoid abandonment. These are unconscious attempts to avoid a repeat of the original wound. Friendships may feel precarious as you're scanning for minor signs of abandonment or rejection. Work environments can feel unsafe if your boss or your supervisor triggers memories of past experiences with unpredictable parents or other caregivers. Even social media can trigger a stress response. The mind's emotional system can't always distinguish between an offhand comment on social media and a real-life threat. Change is possible. These self-protective but limiting adaptations to trauma can improve. The brain itself has a quality that we now recognize as neuroplasticity. The brain can rewire itself in response to real-life experiences. Each time you interrupt an old automatic pattern, you form a new neural pathway. As a rule, this requires a sense of bodily and emotional safety and safe, positive relational experiences. Consider that with early trauma, the kind that formed your very personality, you didn't have bodily and emotional safety, and something about your important relationships didn't feel safe and positive. Or even if the trauma happened much later, it shook your faith that the world is a safe and positive place to be. Either way, new experiences can undo the damage. Self-help. There are a number of strategies you can use instead of or in addition to professional help to help ease the effects of emotional trauma. First, you can unlearn it. When anxiety makes you want to withdraw or avoid situations, if you can get yourself to do it anyway, you'll eventually develop evidence that the world is not as unsafe or negative as your past experience suggests. Small incremental risks change your mind's predictive models. Number 2 is meditation, and this can take many forms. A very common one these days is being mindful of your immediate surroundings, what's called mindfulness meditation. Another is to focus on a calming image, often called guided imagery. And still another is to focus on your breath. These all help to quiet that alarm system, the flight or fight that was originally for ferocious animals. The related practice of slow breathing can also help a lot. Inhale slowly for 6 seconds. Don't hold it. Exhale slowly for 6 seconds. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which can slow the heart rate. This can be done anywhere at any time. You have it with you wherever you go. I've suggested this to a number of my own patients, and I've gotten feedback that it's helpful. Number 3 is self-care. Exercise and good nutrition not only help you physically, but they give yourself a little signal that you're valuable and worthwhile to yourself, that you're worth treating well. If you take care of yourself, you'll like yourself more. It's a kind of positive feedback mechanism. And maybe most important, healthy relationships undo the damage caused by unhealthy relationships. Whether those damaging relationships occurred early in your childhood or much more recently. Positive, safe relationships are inherently healing. Remember, we're social animals, and our sense of safety is enhanced by human connection. Connection is our primary strategy for safety if we can connect with people who are safe and positive for us. Professional help. Here's where the treatment approaches differ for traumas that occurred in early childhood that helped to form your personality, and traumas that occurred later, once your personality was already formed. Remember, what we normally call early childhood trauma is just having a bad childhood that led you to be the person you are. Whereas if a trauma occurs later, we call it trauma. The best treatment for vague, wide-ranging dysfunction caused by early childhood trauma that shaped your personality is depth psychotherapy. Because the damage occurred so early, it's often unconscious, that is, not recognized by the person, him or herself. It's been covered over by years of well-practiced defense mechanisms and hidden by views of oneself and other people that make it pretty hard to unravel. The person's sense of self is weakened in a fundamental way. Depth psychotherapy is an umbrella term that includes psychoanalysis and psychodynamic psychotherapy, which is what I practice, as well as other forms of therapy that aim to get at the underlying roots of emotional problems. They're not satisfied with treating just the surface-level symptoms of distress. We know that deep-seated adaptations to early pain don't respond to quick fixes, and that the therapy relationship itself needs to be positive and safe for natural healing to occur. I discuss the dual benefits of a healing relationship and emotional insight in psychodynamic therapy in this video right here. As for trauma that occurred later, while depth psychotherapy can help, therapies like EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or somatic experiencing, or trauma-focused CBT, can process and detoxify trauma more directly. These approaches aren't for personality distortions or personality disorders caused by early childhood trauma, but they can effectively return a person to their pre-trauma baseline. That is, if you had a well-functioning personality before the trauma occurred, it can get you back to where you were before. They can often do this in a relatively small number of sessions as well, because the trauma is not as baked in, not part of your inherent personality, and it can be relieved more readily that way. Evidence-based. Both kinds of approaches to the treatment of trauma, either in early childhood or later in adult life, these approaches are all supported by multiple studies and meta-analyses, which are studies of groups of studies, and can legitimately be called evidence-based treatments. Emotional trauma that occurred very early in life and helped to shape one's personality typically takes longer to treat and requires a different approach, depth psychotherapy. But in all cases, it's possible to overcome the effects of emotional trauma. Your past may have written the early chapters of your life history, but you have the capacity to write the rest of the story. If this video has been helpful, please subscribe and share your thoughts and observations in the comments. Earlier this year, I did another video on emotional trauma with a somewhat different emphasis, paying more attention to what really counts as trauma. It differs from person to person, and you may want to take a look at that video here. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.